Alright, hey there hobby warriors. Today we're going to be painting some 6mm Imperial guard tanks for Epic Armageddon. Without further ado, let's get right to it. So I'm going for an olive drab color scheme. Uh, in order to help this pop at such a small scale, we're going to go ahead and prime these with uh, German yellow Dunkelgelb primer from Vallejo. So as you see in the video, I put a little bead in the bottle to help mix it up. And in my airbrush, I'm going to add a little bit of flow improver to keep my needle from drying out. And so there we go. That's after a couple of passes. You want a nice even coat. This is really going to be a solid base for making the olive drab really pop. Alright, so next up for the base coats, we're going to go ahead and use the Emo by Mig olive drab modulation set. These paints are pure gold. They come pre-thinned, so if you're using them out of an airbrush, you really don't need to use thinner. They're about the consistency of milk. Really strong pigmentation though. So with these modulation sets, you get a series, usually 4 to 5 shades going from light to dark within the same color palette. So all of these individual colors would be considered olive drab, but when you use them on top of each other, you're able to get highlights and shadows without really changing the color. So here we go with the first layer on the olive drab dark base. And we're going to go ahead and zip through the rest of these. All right, next up we have the olive drab base. And unfortunately, I'm sorry guys, I don't have really a good setup for my airbrush booth to be able to actually record the footage of me spraying. But with the second color, I'm spraying at a 45-degree angle. So I want to get the top of the model, but I only want to hit a certain portion of the sides. I'm not completely covering up that base layer. So we have some lighter color sitting on top, and then the darker color in the shadows, and the further down the tank that we get. The other nice thing is with the airbrush, you can actually blend the colors together very easily. So zip through that color. Now we're ready for the olive drab light base. Now this will be the last color that I'm going to spray. And with this color, a little bit more of a shallow angle. I'm really focusing on the tops of the tanks and not so much the sides. There will be some misting toward the top of the sides, like near the tracks, but I'm really focused on the top. So we'll zip through those. All right, so now we're going to work on highlighting, and we're going to do this via dry brush using a soft bristled makeup brush. So we're going to use the olive drab highlights, and we're just going to go ahead and dry brush this all over the entirety of the tank. And I do apologize, it's my very first time painting on camera, so sometimes I pull the model out of shot. But as you can see, we're just dry brushing all over. We want to hit all of the raised edges. And that soft bristled makeup brush makes it very, very easy, even though that these are tiny, tiny models. So we'll go ahead and we'll blaze through that. And now we're going to do a final dry brush highlight of Vallejo model color Ivory. Now with this, we really just want to focus on the top of the tank, and it's very, very sparse. We really only want to catch the edges. We don't want to risk this color smearing. Now we're on to the detailing. So in the subtitles below, I indicate that it's AMIG. I'm using the AK Interactive colors that are literally the exact same paints, just produced by two separate companies that Miguel Jimenez worked for. But yeah, so I just mixed these together, and I'm going ahead and paint them on the tracks of all of the tanks. The rubber tires is a really, really dark gray. The dark tracks is more of a really, really dark brown. So when you mix them together, you kind of get this sort of mud caking color that's really nice. Now we're going to go ahead and use the magic in a bottle, that is Agrax Earthshade, and go ahead and just tone down all of the highlights that we did and unify all of the colors together. And on to basing. Now, before basing, I actually did airbrush a coat of satin varnish on all of the models. Unfortunately, I forgot to take footage of that. But as you'll notice, the models have a slightly satin sheen to them now. And the basing material that we're going to use is going to be matte, which is going to help provide some contrast for the models. So we're using a flock for the base, Tarmac Black from Geek Gaming Scenics. I'm also using their basing glue. You could just go ahead, put that on your base and spread it around. I'm using a silicone sculpting tool because the glue won't stick to it. So once you're done, you can just rinse it off and you don't have to worry about ruining a brush. But once you get your base all nice and coated in the glue, you're just going to go ahead and put it in the bowl and sprinkle some of the flock on top of it. Now, that basing glue dries clear, but it does dry matte. So you don't have to worry about getting any of it on the tank. If you do, it's just going to dry clear. It won't mess with your colors. And here I'm channeling Salt Bay, just getting my sprinkle on, getting it everywhere. And now, in hindsight, I should have actually let that glue dry before I tapped off the excess. But I was in a hurry. I was filming. So just go ahead, tap off the excess, and then I'm running my fingers along the edges so that I have a nice crisp rim. Make sure none of that glue overspilled. And now to seal the flock, what I'm going to do is mix a little bit of the basing glue, a little bit of Liquitex matte medium, and a little bit of water. And it's not an exact science. The ratio is probably about 1 to 1 to 2, but again, it's not exact. The important thing here is the consistency that you want, which is about the consistency of milk. And there we're going ahead and adding the matte medium. And now guys, one thing I really want to point out, if you're buying little hobby tubes of varnish, matte, satin, or gloss, you're wasting your money. You definitely want to get bigger sizes from a fine art brands such as Liquitex. Even Vallejo, which a lot of people don't realize, sell fine art versions of all of the hobby products that we use. And typically you're getting more for less money. So if anybody's interested in picking up the varnish and whatnot, there is an affiliate link in the description below for Blick Arts. You can go ahead, check their website, and get a great deal on your acrylic mediums. So here I'm just using a pipette and piping it on top of the flock. And you'll see initially the water tension in the glue mix causes it to bead up on the base, which makes this a little bit messy. But very quickly, it'll start leaching into the wood of the flocking. So you just go around the base. Definitely hold this over your cup so that you don't make a mess. And I haven't pointed it out, but on my table, I have it lined with parchment paper, just so that if something does happen to splash, or when I set my minis down, I don't have to worry about it sticking to the table. Once it's dry, I'll be able to just pick it right up. But just go around, make sure all of the flocking is thoroughly saturated. And once you're done, you're going to want to let that sit overnight to dry. And again here, guys, even with the mixing in the matte medium, this is all going to dry clear. So if you end up getting a little bit on the tank, that's okay. All right, and home stretch, the very last step, we're going to go ahead and paint all of the base rims in Vallejo black primer. I'm just using a primer just because it's durable. Using these MDF bases and with them being square cut, when I was priming the tanks, not all of the sides of the base got primed. So just using a primer here gives me the color I need, gives me the protection I need, seals in that wood, and we don't really need to throw a paint on top of this. Just using the primer is fine. And there we are. We're all done. And here's a final shot of some of the finished tanks in my light box. I hope you all enjoyed the video. I do apologize for the camera being out of focus sometimes, but like I said, this was my first, and I'll get better as I keep doing them. So thanks for watching, and slay the gray, Hobby Warriors.